I wanted to do everything I could to protect the place that I called home and my community, and that led me to see the power of organizing and the power of people coming together and what we could do if we united around a shared vision. The dominant mentality of how to think about climate policy in the early 2010s was through a kind of market-fixing approach. What would I want business leaders to see is the critical role of an engaged citizenry and an engaged movement to have a vision and have a movement shaping the direction of our country that is in line with that vision. And to see themselves as part of that, it makes me wonder what if we really had a more powerful coalition, what we could be capable of bringing about for the country. It's a really exciting time and in time for just all hands on deck work to make the transition happen. My name is Diana Jay. I'm a climate movement organizer and the co-founder of the Sunrise Movement, and currently a graduate student at MIT. My story begins in Virginia, where I'm from, and I grew up in Virginia Beach and coastal Virginia. And as a young person, I became very aware of the effects of climate change. I grew up near, where disaster storms would lead to weeks off from school, and we had, the threat of sea level rise was something I was thinking about as a teenager. But I never knew I could do anything about that. I think I saw this challenge looming towards my generation, and I thought maybe I'd be a scientist or study the climate crisis. For me, the journey to movement building and organizing started in 2010. I met someone named Larry Gibson, and he came from West Virginia, and he came to my university and said, you and any of the students, I want you to come and see what's happening in my hometown. And so I remember we got into a minivan and drove out there and stayed on his property in West Virginia. And I can remember standing at the edge of that property, looking out and seeing just a sea of dynamited mountaintops, and just remember feeling this intensity being there of realizing that coal mining that's dynamiting these mountains is connected to what's threatening my home, where I come from in coastal Virginia. And yeah, Larry was somebody who had actually been offered millions of dollars to get up and leave and let that land be dynamited and mined. But he said no, and he said he was going to stay and turn this place in West Virginia into a community and a movement to end mountaintop removal mining in the region. And yeah, I wanted to do what I saw Larry doing. I wanted to do everything I could to protect the place that I called home and my community. And that led me to see the power of organizing and the power of people coming together and what we could do if we united around a shared vision. For years, I campaigned to stop new fossil fuel infrastructure. So I joined the campaign against the Keystone XL pipeline and campaigned to stop natural gas pipelines in my home state. But yeah, while we were winning some of those campaigns, we stopped Keystone XL, we stopped a big pipeline in Virginia, but we were also losing on so many fronts. And we kind of had to say to ourselves, I don't think we can win this way. I don't think we can do this place by place, piece of infrastructure at a time. We need a much bigger strategy. When we launched Sunrise, we had the mission to end the corrupting influence of fossil fuel executives and CEOs of the fossil fuel industry on our political system. So looking at kind of outsized donations from fossil fuel lobbyists into controlling the policy of the government in the favor of fossil fuel interests. And we were also having a mission to, elect a new generation of leaders who would fight for us. So we kind of had a lot of focus there on the political system and how to actually have a government that was capable of addressing the climate crisis. I'm one of the co-founders of the Sunrise Movement, which was a national movement of young people to stop climate change and create millions of good jobs in the process. We were most well known for launching the Green New Deal in this country alongside Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Green New Deal being a 10-year mobilization to fully decarbonize our country and secure for all people the things we need to thrive, being clean water and healthy food and clean air and access to nature and good jobs for everyone, and believing that the transition can actually be something that gets us there and gets us to a better society where we have what we need. Why was there a gap around federal policy? That's a great question. I don't think we wanted to be the ones to actually have to say, we need to build the mass movement to win federal climate policy. We would have preferred that we had that already. The dominant mentality of how to think about climate policy in the early 2010s was through a kind of market fixing approach. That's what is in a carbon tax. And I think a carbon tax is a great policy tool of many in the bucket of policy tools, but it sees a very narrow role of the government. That is, the government's role is to fix externalities in the market. It's to tax pollution, and then the market will fix itself and guide our society to the direction it needs to go. And we were saying, no, that's really not going to work, and we need a bigger vision. So what else is out there? And we were studying history and studying the New Deal and studying the World War II mobilization in this country and saying, this was really the last time in our country where we had a focused, directed federal strategy that was shaping markets into the direction and shaping the economy into the direction that we needed to go. And what were the tools that we were using at that time to do that? And can we use some of those lessons and those tools in this time to have a kind of fully funded, fully coordinated response to the climate crisis? And that kind of became the foundation of the vision of the Green New Deal. What Sunrise is most known for, and I think what I'm the most proud of, was the work of launching the Green New Deal. From the moment we launched the Green New Deal, which was, I think, 6 days after the 2018 midterm elections, it was a whole burst of momentum that really didn't cut off for years. When we launched the Green New Deal, we did it through a sit-in in Congress, and at that time, Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi's office. And at that time, we went in kind of with the whole leadership of our movement, which was 200 people, to put forward this question to the Democratic Party that was, what is your plan around climate change? And to put forward our vision of the Green New Deal. So we started with those 200, and then 3 weeks later, we were back in Congress with 1,500 people. And in the next month, we had gone from 20 local chapters to 300. And by the end of that year, we were at 500 chapters in all 50 states. So the growth was explosive, and it really showed me, I think, just how eager people were to see themselves in a vision that was aggressively ambitious on what it's actually going to take to address the climate crisis, and also so rooted in what's possible for a better society where we have clean air and clean water to drink and healthy food and good jobs, and what could be the hopeful side of what's in it for us to gain through this transition. And people were hungry for a vision that spoke to that and really showed up in the Green New Deal movement for that. So I really appreciate this question of what was Sunrise Movement's relationship with the business community, especially during the time of the Green New Deal and campaigning for federal climate policy. And I've been thinking about this when I was invited to speak to the Business and Global Society. Somebody said to me, "Oh, like you're the first one, you're the first person like this that we've invited here, so the first kind of social movement organizer that we've invited to come speak to our group." And I remember I was like, that's interesting. And because I was having the same experience too, where I was saying like, oh, this is the first time kind of the business community has ever invited me to come share my story. So there's a gap there, I think, of this side, two sides of the work that are incredibly engaged in addressing the climate crisis, and a gap in what that relationship does look like or could look like. And so my answer, to what was our relationship was not very much of a relationship with the business community. We were, the campaign for the Green New Deal at that time was the labor movement and the environmental justice movement and the youth movement. And I think the first time we really became aware of more of the business community's role in federal climate policy setting was at the very late stage. So, kind of industry trade groups at the very tail end of that push of shaping what the tax credits would look like and shaping some of the policy to be most favorable to the clean energy industry, which of course is an important role, but it makes me wonder what if we really had a more powerful coalition, what we could be capable of bringing about for the country. What I would say to the business community and business leaders is, from my perspective as an organizer and someone who spent a decade in the movement for climate justice. And part of wanting to share my story is to help more people understand the bigger picture of how society transforms and how we win transformative policy to move the economy in the direction of climate solutions and a climate transition. Getting to this moment came from decades of work of the local environmental justice movements, decades of work at the labor movement, and of course, I'm proud of the tireless fight of the youth climate movement that raised the urgency of this issue. And what would I want business leaders to see is the critical role of an engaged citizenry and an engaged movement to have a vision and have a movement shaping the direction of our country that is in line with that vision, and to see themselves as part of that. So, like, for me, I think there was a moment after the IRA passed that I had, like, it kind of dawned on me that so much of my work and my organizing work probably has created a new generation of millionaires and a new generation of businesses and new profit from the industries that are going to have the opportunity to thrive in this climate transition economy. And I was like, oh, shoot, that is part of the goal. But, the goal was to really to get our society to a different place. And it made me ask, like, is there a relationship between the businesses that are going to profit during this transition to have actually a relationship with the movements that catalyze the transition? The climate transition requires of us to change so many aspects of our lives. It's requiring of us to change how we get our energy and how we grow our food and building more resilient, locally rooted food systems. It's requiring us to think about how we get around and change our transportation and invest in public transit. And that just touches every aspect of our lives. And the people who know how to do the work of working with people and working with communities and knocking on doors, those are community organizations and social movements. And I think if we are truly to decarbonize the economy, which is an agenda that so many businesses share, there's a need and a relationship to work together to actually reach every person in this transition. And that's the work of community organizing and movement building as well. So I feel very curious about how those things come together in a moment of major transition in our society as another point of collaboration. I think we need to have a lot more conversations like this. And obviously there's like a history of antagonism between the community movement, like social movements and businesses, a history of a lack of accountability between businesses and profits and the extraction of community resources. So I'm like, well, it makes sense that there's some bad blood, I think, between the two parties. And at this point in my life, I think where I sit is we sit at a major moment and a major precipice that requires everyone to do what we can. And there was moments where I think, especially as an organizer, I felt incredibly frustrated. And of course, we feel that way about the cards that we've been dealt as young people. And I think at this moment, I'm wanting a lot more conversations about what we can all bring to the table and willingness to talk to each other. And that's including businesses, that's including movements, it's including faith leaders who are building spaces for grieving what is being lost, and it's farmers building new food systems. So my hope is just more people being able to say, how is all of our lives and all of our work going to be related to this moment in this transition? I think what we're seeing in this moment of federal policy is sort of the first moment that we're seeing a very focused federal agenda in shaping the direction of our economy. So that is, and that has addressing climate change at the heart of it, of moving away from fossil fuels and building the solutions that we need to address climate change and making those available and accessible across the country. So I think it's an incredibly exciting moment. We're, at the level of funding investment, I think the IRA calculations are now up to near $1 trillion over the next decade, expected to be invested in the clean energy economy. And yeah, that's huge. And what we're seeing is that's actually having a much more outsized transformative impact. So you look at kind of a smaller amount of federal money building the kind of patient capital and investment that's needed to really stimulate a whole economy and crowd in private investment and give the kind of foothold for new industries to develop, for new manufacturing, new energy to develop. So that's all happening incredibly quickly, and it's a really exciting time and in time for just all hands on deck work to make the transition happen. Something that excites me about the design of the IRA, which was so fundamental to us in building the vision of the Green New Deal, was to see economic policy and climate policy as united and see the climate crisis as an opportunity to build millions of good jobs in this country. What you see now is like the way the policy is designed is actually to incentivize, if you are good on labor and good on locating your plants in places where there's the most need for economic transition, then you get more federal investment. That's how it works. I think we're just seeing the immense amount of creative ideas about how we can use federal funding to stimulate new industries where we live. And so here in Massachusetts, that's looked like a lot of focus on building and accelerating the offshore wind industry and building and accelerating clean transportation and electrified transportation. And so those are a few projects that I've been involved in that I think are exciting. So in building the vision of the Green New Deal, we obviously studied the New Deal and the World War II economic mobilization. Policy tools-wise, what was happening in World War II was we had a president who would address Congress and say, we need 50,000 planes by the end of the year. And in 2 months' time, Congress would turn around and say, okay, here's how we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to finance new plants, and had just this manufacturing and industrial agenda at the heart of the country, and an incredibly focused set of policy tools to get us there. So there was the earned profits tax that said, this is a crisis of our country. We will not make too much money from that and feed that back into the economy, as well as the National War Labor Board that put business and labor unions on equal footing for negotiation during that time. And so I think those tools and that moment, it's like we find ourselves in another similar moment where we're saying, okay, we need 30 million heat pumps, and we need them very soon to retire all of our oil furnaces and oil heating that's polluting our homes and continuing to rely on fossil fuels. So how do we get there? And can we have a focused, coordinated industrial effort in this country to build the things we need for the climate transition? Well, it's hard to answer that question without kind of recalling where Harvard Business School was perhaps during World War II. And in 1943, the business school the faculty here voted to suspend the MBA program to dedicate the full resources of the institution towards industrial mobilization in this country. And, maybe that's not what we do right now, but it makes me think, what is a moment of mass transition and really a crisis that threatens the survival of our species? What does that demand of our education institutions, of our business schools? And is there a moment of saying we need to focus our curriculum in this way to address climate change, to take seriously and put at the heart of all of our work the solutions to the challenges we face? I'm curious about what the answer to that would be. And, I think what would I say to students here? Somebody once said to me, the worst of our societies is when business and the government conspire against people and drag down where we are. And the best is when the government and business collaborate towards a shared agenda that lifts up society and where we're going. What does it look like to have a collaborative approach and actually seeing not an antagonizing relationship between business and government, but one that is cooperative and sees that government investment and government capacity can be good for building a thriving business community and environment, especially for building the solutions we need to address the climate crisis. I think the moment we're in now is much more of a implement and deploy and go and make the work happen moment. For me, that's part of what brought me back to grad school to study state government and to see myself working both in governments and continuing to organize, but to be part of how do we actually make this happen right now, and how do we give everything we have to make it happen now. So it's less of this kind of like, I think that moment earlier in Sunrise to really make the crisis known, and now we're like, what are we going to do about it, and how do we do it as best and as fast as we can?